So it's late and we want to make sure that you have time for your questions. So if anybody wants to ask a question, just raise your hand and we'll get right to the audience questions. No questions?
Maybe we can introduce the movie before.
Right.
Somebody in the back, yes. Okay. No, I think it's an interesting observation. I don't know if you want to say anything about
No, sorry, because I just understood that the movie was emotional, and I thank you for that. But I didn't understand where the question was coming from.
It wasn't really a question. It was more an observation about the two characters being very different in terms of how the audience relates to them. The male character being much more emotional, much easier for this viewer at least to understand his motivations.
The main character. There's not one main character, I think, in the movie. There are two people, and I think that Fausto is a main character, but Nadine is important in the same way. And I think they, in different moments of the story, they are emotional in the same way. I mean that it's a story that doesn't talk about a guy. It's a story that talks about a guy and a girl. And if I understood well your question or your consideration, I have to say that while I was writing this story, I was thinking about two characters that are leading the whole story.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the title. I'm curious. In Italy, the film was released as Alaska, which is the name of the club, and but for international, it's been translated as The Beginners. Can you say a bit about that?
Yes, the first title I thought about was The Beginners, that in English can work, but in Italian the meaning was not that good. The story you saw is a love story, even if it's tough, even if you think during all those years that pass that they shouldn't stay together. But I thought about it. I thought about this Alaska title because I didn't want a title that has had love or heart or something like that inside, because it was too easy. And I'm very connected with the American world, and I knew that in the 19th century, for example, in Alaska, there were those people going to find gold in those big adventures that meant or richness or probably dying. And I thought that this name, this Alaska title could work with my idea of the movie. That I tell again, it's a love story, but it's a coming of age story in which there are people that are totally alone, ruthless, that think that they are something and they mean something only if they reach some kind of richness, a position, a role in the world. And they don't understand that probably there is something more important than that. And if you consider the whole story, you can see how in the beginning it's Fausto who wants to reach something in a way that is maybe childish, and in the second part Fausto can get this, but his position is not the same of Nadine. It's a movie in which in every moment they are not in the same position. when things go well for her, things go bad for him, and it's also the same when things go well for him, they go bad for her, that's why I decided for this type.
You describe it as a love story between two people who are sort of very alone. It seems very important that they are from different places too. Can you say a little bit more about the decision? When we meet him, he's the outsider in France, and then she becomes the outsider.
Yes, I wanted to shoot an European story, a story that is larger than the borders of Italy, and I thought that it was right to have two characters that were coming from different places, different countries, because I wanted very bad to have the feeling that Fausto in the beginning of the story, he's like an orphan, totally alone, and when he go to prison, he says precisely that to Nadine. I'm alone, I have nobody, and it's the same feeling that she has when she's in Italy after breaking his legs, after that car accident, and not having the chance to do or to work as a model anymore. And so they are always in a foreign land, in a way or in another, because I think that the world we are living in, it's a very hostile world, very difficult, and we have to fight a lot to find a place that we can call home, and we can say, okay, I'm in the right place, in the right moment, with the right person.
Okay. I'm sure there are questions now. Yes? Yep. Is that a hand? No? Yes. Question is about the choice to set the film in Milan, the Italian portions. Why Milan?
Because I wanted to be believable the world they are in. In Europe, Milano and Paris, maybe also London, are the most important cities for fashion, and big cities in which you can feel totally alone. And that's why I put the beginning of the story in Paris and the second part in Milano, because Milano is a city in Italy that has more chances to see people coming and going. Is one of the more multicultural cities we have. It's, I think, the more European city we have in Italy. Rome, even if it's the capital, it's not the same thing. So the story had to be set in Milano and in Paris.
Yes. The question is specifically about the killing of Marco, and this viewer thought it might be too much, and whether you considered that.
I don't think so. I think that this killing is a proof of what can happen in a story that wants to be bigger than life, in a way, and it was necessary to understand how Fausto grew up in the story, and how he can take the responsibility of taking care of Nadine after the prison. It's a story which is totally, sorry for my English again, circular, in which we end where we began, in a way, but in a different way, because the first time, you know for sure, Fausto was in prison, and in the end it's Nadine, but there is a different precision in the end, in which they grew up, and they are adult enough to understand what it's really important in their life. So I know that it's a big shock watching Nadine killing somebody, or that a big accident, but I think that all the story called us to arrive to that. Yeah, I know there are a lot of disasters inside this story, but I don't like, and it's not a matter of liking or not liking something. I wanted to do a story that was breathless, totally, but because I had the experience of lives that were guided this way, and I know that it's a story that it's, as I said before, bigger than life, but I wanted to put in the movie only the most important part of their lives, and all their accident, or all the things that were happening to them, and I thought it was right in that way.
Did you have any particular films in mind that you were thinking of in terms of, you know, these bigger than life love stories that you had as reference points as you were writing?
Yes, for sure. There is the experience of watching when I was younger all the French Nouvelle Vague movies, and for sure there is all the 70s American directors coming from USA that give me inspiration, because every time I think about a story, there are all those directors that in a way watch me, and give me advices while I'm writing and shooting, and these are the most evident inspirations.
Are there any more? Yes.
I think that Sandro's role is very important, because when I write stories, I didn't do a lot of movies. I just did a couple of movies, but I think that the other characters doesn't know that they are not main characters, but they have to be shown and written and treated as they were main characters. That's why Sandro and also Benoit in the prison are so important. Benoit, because he's like an older brother. The story of Benoit is very important. While I was editing the movie, my producers sometimes said, okay, but there is a scene in which Benoit meets his wife, and we don't have Fausto, we don't have Nadine, it's something different from the main story. And I said, look, we wrote that scene because it was important for Fausto and Nadine, because Benoit and his wife are the reflection of what in the end Fausto and Nadine become, and also they are an example for Fausto, because living with Benoit in the prison, it's very important for his growing up, I would say, but I know that it's not appropriate as English. And going to Sandro, Sandro is a person who tried to achieve richness for his own life, who wasn't good enough to do it, who needed somebody near him, and I thought that it was like a kind of a metaphor of what could have become Fausto's life if he didn't understood in the last minutes of the movie what was really important. Sandro dies alone because he lost Fausto, because he lost his place, and he was not able to find something else that had a sense, an important sense in his life. So they are those characters are a reflection and a sound like for our main characters. In a Greek tragedy, they would be like a chorus that shows and tells what they risk and what they could become. That's why I wrote and I shot a scene that couldn't be important for the movie, like Sandro's suicidal, but I wanted to follow everything because it was important for Fausto's life.
In the back, yes? I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I actually couldn't hear the question. Could you please repeat it? Scene with
because after her accident and after Fausto robbery, I'm sure because I wrote the book. She doesn't trust him. She knows that he still loves her and he still wants her. He's still near, but she's trying to have not to have a break because it's not the right word I know in English, but she wants to destroy everything. Our characters, my characters, Fausto and Nadine, for the whole movie, they take the wrong decisions. And in a way, Nadine's decision to fuck with his boss or what he is something it's trying to create a pain for her and for Fausto and trying to destroy everything. They are auto-destructive in the whole movie because I loved and I wanted to tell a story about people, two guys that are totally wrong and they take the wrong decisions every time. Because I felt and I saw a lot of people doing that, even if they had good ideas, even if they wanted to do the right thing, they always take the bad decision because they are trying to see and to achieve something good, but they pass through a lot of mistakes. And in that moment of the story, she wanted to destroy everything with Fausto, but at the same time we see that 1 year after, she wants to go back to him. And in the same moment, even if Fausto is touched by her coming, and even if he's really jealous when she kisses with the other guy, he's not able to take the right decision because he's not ready. That's why.
Time for a final question. So yes, in the front here.
Thank you for the successful movie. I was totally enthralled. Which do you prefer? Writing is very lonely, but directing is very outgoing and involved with people. Which do you prefer to do as your
Question is whether Claudio prefers writing or directing.
It's very difficult, madam, because writing is the most difficult part of my job, because I feel miserable every day while I write. I think I cannot get to the point. I think I will never end the story. And then after all this moment of crisis, there is a script that it's maybe 120 pages long, but it's something that I love, but at the same time is dead. And you need actors, you need a set, you need something more. That's why I wrote the script thinking that it was the best script possible for this kind of story. And then when we were on while we were on the set, I tried to betray it, and I asked the actors not to become the characters, but I asked them to change the characters. The characters had to become the actors that were playing the story. So because I wrote the story thinking about Elio Germano, that I already know, I already knew, sorry. And when I found Astrid, the main actress, I needed somebody who was good and powerful and wild enough to stay near Fausto, near my actor. And so the shooting is in a way easier for me, but it's just the second step in which everything totally changes. So if I can tell you how I went to bed after every day of shooting, I felt miserable again, because I didn't know what was happening. You just see what happened in the end of the movie, and you say, okay, that's what I shot, that's what I did in the end, but it's very tough. I would like to be only on the set, but I like to write my own stories, so I have to pay that.
I'm afraid that's all the time we have for, but thank you so much, Claudio, for being here. Thank you all.